together.
A message from Renew America Together, brought to you by the Ad Council.
Okay, fellas, let's keep this thing rolling. Let me pose this question. Does Irvin, I said, have any magic left in him to be able to bring the NFL back to LA?
Absolutely. I think, first of all, the first question you should ask is, does LA want the NFL? That's the first question we should ask, because they've had the Rams, because people didn't come to the games, the Rams were forced to move to St. Louis. They had Oakland. They had the Raiders. Then the Raiders were forced to move back to Oakland just because they couldn't get a stadium deal. So the question we should be asking is, does LA want the NFL back in their backyard? And I think they do, just because I think the NFL wants to be in LA more than anything, just because of the revenue stream that they're missing out on. Go ahead.
I'm sorry. The question that was posed to us is, does Magic's popularity make him, I guess, the best option to bring football back? I understand what you're saying too. In the Ice Cube special on ESPN, I thought that gave it away. They do want football.
Yeah. I think Magic, his notoriety and his corporate connections can help bring the NFL back to LA. I think if he were to be in a group of investors, he would have to be the face, just because everyone loves Magic, everyone in LA loves Magic, and people worldwide love Magic. So if Magic Johnson is in a group of investors and he's the face of that investment team, I think definitely the NFL comes back to LA.
Yeah, just to harp on what Will said, it doesn't get any, in terms of LA, it doesn't get any bigger than Magic Johnson. From the 80s to on, Magic Johnson's been the biggest thing in LA.
Because he gained weight.
Yeah, that too.
Get bigger
that
than
too.
him.
But he brought Showtime to LA. In terms of the fame and whatnot. So Magic alone will being the face, being the face of that movement to bring in a team to LA. I think it'll be an unstoppable force, especially with his business savvy. We're not even speaking on that. His business savvy is off the charts.
The economy in California is jacked up. We know that getting a stadium built is the primary issue.
We couldn't use like a college stadium.
Because actually, not too long ago, there was a developer out in LA who essentially has all the approvals to construct a stadium in LA, but his only thing is finding a team to bring to LA. And essentially, we all know that the NFL isn't going to expand anymore. So if the LA gets a team, it's going to be by contraction. It's either going to be the Minnesota Vikings because they can't get a deal for a stadium, or the most likely is the Jacksonville Jaguars, because no one watches NFL football in Jacksonville.
And like a good point, Jacksonville, I was thinking about it myself. I was thinking about that would probably be the best team to go to LA, because honestly, in Florida, there's only one NFL team that runs that house, and that's the Miami Dolphins. In terms of an NFL team, so they won't really make the money they want in terms of being in Jacksonville. That's not a place to do anything, sell out stadiums when you have the Dolphins there.
It's the product you put on the field. You see the Rays, they don't get any fans in the stands during baseball season, but Tampa Bay sells out. I'm talking about the Buccaneers sell out. So what does that say to you? Football is big. I don't know what Jacksonville is doing. That's their problem. Jaguars made a mistake, but Jacksonville is a bad market, so I'm going to say it's a 60-40 chance. We'll see that happens. Speaking of the Jags, they started Todd Bowman at quarterback. And, to be real, he didn't play that bad, but he wasn't a standout. My question is, who stood out and why? Because there's a lot to choose from this week. Roddy White, Kenny Britt.
That was my man there, man. After getting in a brawl in a nightclub, Kenny Britt comes out there and has a game with 225 yards and 3 touchdowns. And a lot of speculation came out that, he might not even play.
Me being totally objective, because I'm an Eagles fan, I'm going to say Kenny Britt. Kenny Britt dominated. There's not a person on God's green earth who expect for maybe Kenny Britt who expected for him to produce like that. The guy had 225 yards, receiving yards, and 3 touchdowns. The guy showed out. He dominated. That was kind of his redemption for being benched during the start of the game.
Ryan Fitzpatrick stood out for me. My man Ryan Burton was a little pissed on Twitter. He got real upset. He's a Ravens fan. It's kind of funny, I think, how they got the same name. He still was upset. Anyway, B-More versus Buffalo wasn't a game that we anticipated discussing here, which is why we're not, actually. and last show, we picked winners from 5 games. The first being NYG, the Giants, the G-Men versus Dallas. I picked Dallas, obviously not knowing that John Kitna was going to be playing. But that was my pick. I didn't do too bad. 2-3, I believe. How'd you guys do?
I did pretty good. I think what did I go?
I'm checking it right now to make sure.
Check the stats.
Check the stats, please.
Give your analysis on
Okay,
NYG
let's see.
versus Dallas.
Against the Giants and Dallas, Will T picked the Giants.
So I got that one right.
You
Okay.
got that one right.
Okay, I picked Dallas, like Ray, So I took the L with that. Thanks, Roy Williams, for not getting a single point for me in my fantasy football team, but we'll get to that later. Minnesota versus Green Bay. I picked Minnesota. Ray picked Minnesota. Will picked Minnesota. Fish picked Minnesota. We all lost.
We all picked Minnesota.
Exactly. I ain't know that.
Hey, really quick though.
No, my
It
bad.
looks as if both the Vikings and Cowboys will have backups playing this week. Yes, Brett Favre, that streak is finally coming to an end. Who will be more successful, Kitna or Tavares? Place your bet. Wally, he's the champ, so we're gonna start with him. Sorry, Will.
Okay. Yeah, I'm gonna pick Tavares Jackson. I think that the New England Patriots have a young secondary, and plus he can scramble in the pocket and find Randy Moss deep, something that Brett Favre couldn't do.
Well, I'm going to counter, and I'm going to say John Kitna, and here's why. The Jacksonville Jaguars have not been able to sustain the pass rush all season. Clearly, anyone who's watched the Dallas Cowboys games knows that Dallas is not very good at this point at pass blocking. So Kitna will have plenty of time in the pocket to go against the Jacksonville secondary, which isn't all that great. And when you have Dez Bryant, Roy Williams, and Austin Miles, and then you have Miles Austin.
I'm about to say, let's do this segment over.
I'm gonna go with the flow. If you have Miles Austin, then you have Jason Witten, and then you also have Marion Barber, and you also have Felix Jones. The biggest question is Jason Garrett going to call a good game, call a consistent game, which he hasn't done this far. So there's a possibility that Tavares Jackson does have a better game, but I'm gonna just say off of what we know about both of these teams, I'm going to go with Dallas.
Great analysis, Shorter Will. Arizona versus Seattle was the next game we picked. And Wally, you picked Seattle. Will picked Arizona. I picked Seattle. Will was the odd man out with that one. Again, Fish, he didn't make a pick.
Push.
Sucked. That's why he didn't show up, because he knew he didn't do good in making picks. So it is what it is. I actually saw Max Hall for a high second. I was looking at DirecTV, and he didn't look too good. The first start he had looked much better. I think on the road, maybe that was the problem.
Arizona's just terrible on the road.
Anyway, moving on. Pittsburgh
Arizona's
versus
terrible,
Miami.
period.
Anyway, moving on. Pittsburgh versus Miami. I picked Miami. Will, you had Pittsburgh. Wally had MIA. Don't raise your hands, Will. And Fish picked Pittsburgh. We all know what happened in that game. It was controversial.
We all know that Pittsburgh won. That's what happened. Pittsburgh won. I got the pick right. Next.
Any
tally
further
these, bro.
thoughts on that bad call, or has ESPN and everybody else ran in the ground?
Everyone's ran into the ground. Everyone who saw the game knows what happened.
And the last game we picked from last week was New England versus San Diego. Wally, you had San Diego. That was wrong.
Yeah.
I picked New England. Will picked New England. High five to Will on that one. And Fish, I was about to call him Wish. Wishbone. Fish picked San Diego. He was wrong, too. He was just all wrong. Didn't pick games. So, hey, man.
Hey, that team,
Good job on
that
that
team,
showing up.
the Chargers, they just beat themselves. They find new and cool ways to beat themselves.
I just think it's just I think it's a lot of things that go into
Lack of coaching?
The lack of coaching, and then no disrespect to our California listeners, but anyone who's ever been to California knows it's a lot laid back out there.
Mm-hmm.
So you're not gonna. People don't have the mentality of the East Coast. So the teams on the East Coast, they have a sense of urgency. People out in California, they don't necessarily have a sense of urgency. They're more laid back. And that's why this Chargers team, until their back is against the wall later on in the season, doesn't play until they're more urgent.
I totally disagree. I don't think you can name how many people on the Chargers are actually from California, so they may have
No,
East
it's
Coast
it's
mentality.
You think it's the environment that
it's
brings
the
them down?
environment. It's the environment that they live in.
Man, it's the
nice-
environment of North Turner.
No,
That's
it's a
what it
lot of
is.
similarities between the East Coast and West Coast. Trader Joe's, Chipotle, it's all growing to be the same, man. Let's keep it simple, dog. Anyway, one of the big games coming up this weekend, and let's go ahead and make our picks. We'll start off with the Monday night game, Houston versus Indianapolis.
I'm going to go with Houston on this one.
Wow. Give me Indy.
I'm taking Houston.
Okay.
Let's move on. Minnesota versus New England.
Give me Minnesota.
Give me New England.
I'm going to take New England. I have no further thoughts. I'm sorry. we can move on. Pittsburgh versus New Orleans. I'm not gonna be able to write down all our picks
Of
if y'all
course.
not gonna say much.
I got you.
All right, thank you. You got the church pencil over there. That's what I'm talking about.
No, yeah, you know what I'm saying? Is it China? It's a China. We got a pencil.
All right, Pittsburgh versus New Orleans. And just to recap really quick our picks. Will, you took Houston. I took Houston. Wally took Indianapolis. And Minnesota versus New England. I took New England. Who'd you take again?
I took New England.
And who did you
Oh,
take?
I took Minnesota.
Okay, you got that recorded?
Yes, it's recorded.
All the listeners, y'all got that out there? Make your picks. Pittsburgh versus New Orleans.